Welcome to Built for This, the podcast where purpose meets performance. Hosted by business strategist and human behavior specialist Carly Pepin, this show dives into the real stories behind high-growth businesses. Let's bring life to your vision.
All right, guys. So today I have Carlos Lauchu with us, and I'm really excited for this one. Not only is he a very old family friend, but he's done amazing things in the education industry. So we'll get to talk about it and some of the logistics on the back end for all us business lovers. But simultaneously, I think it's going to be really interesting to learn how Carlos has engaged students to such a degree to be able to help them really excel. Like we're talking about beyond doing well, like actually excel. So Carlos Lauchu is a nationally recognized STEM education leader with more than 25 years of experience transforming how students learn science and technology. A former Teacher of the Year, he built LAUSD's Science Academy STEM Magnet from a small classroom program into one of the top-ranked schools of the United States, where students consistently achieve some of the highest test scores in California and graduate high school with college degrees. Under his leadership, students have earned national recognition in robotics, research, and innovation, winning 10 consecutive state championships and 2 world championships. Commended by the U.S. President, members of Congress, and educational leaders worldwide, Carlos has become a driving force for integrated STEM education. As he continues to transform education, he is expanding his mission as a speaker and consultant, helping schools nationwide adopt his proven model for preparing students to compete and lead in a rapidly changing global economy. So welcome, Carlos. I'm really excited to talk to you about this.
Hi, Carly. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm excited too.
And I think so. What's really fun is I remember when Carlos came over to my parents' house for dinner, and he was so frustrated with the level of like attention and education that the kids at school were having. And you were so pissed off that day. I just remember how angry you were. And it's funny because it's like today, looking back at what you were so frustrated with, you genuinely have transformed the education system. So we'll tell everyone a little bit about how it went from, hey, I'm so pissed off, to like, I'm one of the top schools in the United States.
Yeah, I remember that day. It was the situation was that I had just started working for LAUSD, and I started at a high school, and I didn't understand. Right from the get-go, I was assuming that the kids knew certain things, and I was teaching science classes. I was teaching physics and chemistry and biology and some math classes, and um, what I had envisioned or what I thought the kids were coming to high school with wasn't happening. They didn't know. And I'm sitting here trying to teach what in education we have these standards that we have to cover, set by the state. And and I was struggling with it because I didn't feel like the kids had the foundational knowledge that they needed in order for me to teach them what I was supposed to teach them. So after a few years of teaching high school, I wanted to know what was going on, so I moved to middle school to see, what was happening. And then got to middle school and found out that, I looked at the textbooks and I looked at the curriculum and looked at what they were learning in middle school, and I said, "Whoa, no, these kids can do so much more. What are we doing? Why are we holding them back?" So I just kind of dove in, and knowing what they needed in high school, because I had taught high school for a few years, I kind of started changing the curriculum, adding the things that I felt they needed to be successful in high school. So I started changing and creating my own standards. And instead of teaching the kids what I was supposed to teach them standards wise, I started teaching them what I thought they needed in order to be successful in high school and beyond. So
Yeah.
that's how it all started.
That's amazing. And if you could share with the listeners too, just a bit more about Science Academy STEM Magnet and let them know what's different about the school, what's kind of special. We kind of talked about a bit of your accolades, but just so they can understand more of the back end of what that looks like.
Okay. So as I started increasing the rigor, um, I got to see that there were certain strategies, um, certain type of pedagogy that worked really well for the kids, getting them more involved, actively involved in the learning process, getting them engaged, um, making sure that there was a connection to relevant and real life, um, things that are going on in their life. They weren't just learning science and math in isolation. This is physics, but it has nothing to do with your life. No, this is physics and it has everything to do with your life every moment of every day. So I I reached out to the district, and I was able to get some resources from the community and started um, getting some textbooks and so forth that I could use to supplement what I was doing. And it just exploded from there. Every year I added a little bit more. Every year I added a little bit more, and all of a sudden, within a few years, I found myself teaching at the advanced placement level to my seventh graders in biology. And I'm going, whoa, should I do this? This is a big deal. I don't know if anybody else in the world is doing this. Um, I talked to the students. They were really eager. They were excited. Um, I went ahead and decided to do it. I had a fight. I had to fight a few people along the way who said, "Hey, we're not going to give you textbooks. You can't do this. You're gonna hurt the kids and so forth." But we fought through it in that first year. I had a small group of students who decided to take the AP exams. They were in seventh grade, and they all got fours and fives. And they were 12 years old, and they were in seventh grade. And it was just this epiphany for me. It's like, oh my gosh, maybe they can. And it grew from there. I started teaching AP to seventh graders. A few years later, that was biology, because the
Mhm.
standards in the state of California is life science in seventh grade. So they're already supposed to learn the life sciences and health, but you can augment those standards. Um, you can't, you shouldn't teach less, of course, but teaching more is never an issue. Um, and so a few years later, I started getting the kids in seventh and eighth grade as well. And in eighth grade, it's the physical sciences, which is
Mhm.
chemistry, physics, and astronomy. And I started doing the same thing with them, and that became successful. So I just started backwards mapping the instruction, and I got lucky because a few years after that, I got the sixth graders. And so now I had them for sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. I had them 3 years in a row. I knew what they needed in order for them to be successful in seventh grade, and I knew what they needed in order to be successful in eighth grade. So I just backwards mapped my instruction, which was kind of like the new thing about 20 years ago. Everybody started talking about it, to meet the needs of what they needed in the later grades.
Mhm.
It was That was great. That was the great part. Challenging the kids and learning that they can. The part that wasn't so much fun were all the naysayers, everybody who said, what are you doing, you're not supposed to be doing that. You're gonna hurt their brains. They're not capable of learning this sort of thing. And just trying to convince everyone that it's not. Everybody's always complaining about how poorly our students are doing on their assessments, state assessments, and this is nationwide. It's like, you got a couple of spots here and there that where the kids are doing great, but overall, everybody's always complaining how, the students just they're not doing well. And I think, I came to realize that, maybe it's the system. It's not the kids, it's us. We
Mhm.
don't give them um we don't give them what that the the support that they should have, and the benefit of the doubt that they deserve. They have the
Mhm.
potential. Let's not create a system that holds them back from maximizing that potential. And I think that's what I did is I removed the barriers. I removed all the naysayers, and I shot for the stars, and the kids shot for the stars with me. And yeah, they made a lot of mistakes along the way, and there were a few tears here and there, but in my classroom, I had this thing, you never, and in my school, we don't say, hey, you got that wrong. Hey, you didn't do that right. We say, hey, that's great. You found a way that doesn't work. All right, that's good. That's progress.
Awesome.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, let's try to find a way that does work, and if they find another thing that quote unquote is wrong, because we don't like to say that, we say, okay, you found another way that doesn't work. That's progress. Now we know what not to do, right? So let's keep going. And it just so long as you always provide a light at the end of the tunnel and have faith in them and give them the opportunity, it's just they'll get there. Some faster than others, but at least it's not us. At least it's not the system holding them back. So
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to provide.
So this is
That
really
opportunity.
cool. Yeah, this is really cool because it's like, I mean, I know we're talking about education in a school, but this is actually like a human potential story, right? Where we look at kids so often. That makes me crazy, by the way, that we look at kids and we're like, well, they can't do this, they shouldn't do that, it's too much
Yeah.
for them. And I had the opportunity to work with some really young children, with some how would we just very high achievers as parents, that it's not even an expectation for their kids to achieve a lot. It's just that they were paying attention and they're like, whoa, my kid's really into this and I think he can start it now. Like, can you connect with him and see how it would go? And I'm like, yeah, I would love that. And you're talking to these little like 8 and 9 year olds and you're like, oh my gosh, they're way more clear on their life and their path and their purpose than I am today. Like it took me forever to get to that point, and it's because we just don't realize like how much potential is in like the human brain, and that the children are developing much more quickly than we thought. So for you, you're also, what I love about this is really challenging the kids, right? Like there is a supportive dynamic on how you're challenging them, but you are pushing them hard. And I've noticed in our system, there's a real, like almost gear shift towards over support, I would say, right? Where there's this dynamic of we're over supporting kids to not feel uncomfortable, to not feel the challenge, to feel almost a little bit too soft. And I would love for you to share more about like the way that you're challenging them, how you're helping them to grow in such a way that the kids are actually enjoying it. Because it's my true belief that as human beings, we do not want to live in an over supportive environment. Like it sort of melts our brain and body away into nothing. Where when we're challenged and we're excited and engaged, like it actually helps our brain to myelinate, it helps it to grow. And yeah, how are you basically? I'm curious how you saw that as well, right? Because you're like one of the unique individuals who saw that in the kids that they could do more, but how you continue to nurture that because you're really getting them to be the best that they could be at a very young age.
Yeah. Um, you know, there are several different things. You don't what you don't want to do is you don't want to create an environment where failure is the expectation. And then when things don't work, um, that's that becomes the focus. You do not want to create that kind of environment. Um, you know, you want to get to know your kids. We're really I was really big on getting to know my kids. Like I said, I had them in sixth grade. So I got to know them. My school, today, um, we really work hard to get to know our kids in sixth grade, right when they come to us. And they're at all different levels. So we want to evaluate their potential. We want to see where they are. So we take a lot of time giving them the tools that they need from the get-go. A lot of them don't come in with good time management skills. A lot of them come in, they don't know what it means to study. So the study habits really aren't there. So it's there are a lot of things that need to happen just from the start. You got to give them the tools. You got to teach them study skills. You got to teach them time management. You've got to get to know your kids so that you know which path to take with them. And then and that's all part of the instruction, and we're heavy on that in sixth grade. So get to know the human being and make sure that they have the tools that they need to actually learn in the classroom. Then you teach them how to learn. And teaching students how to learn is something that I think a lot of institutions leave behind. They just assume that the students know how to learn, but get up in front of them and say, "Hey, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to start at this point, and this is our end goal. What is the purpose of the lesson? And get the kids engaged and make sure that they understand that everything that they do in school is relevant and to them, applicable and important. Not that they're learning it, just because they're supposed to learn it to pass the grade and get to the next level. So there's this connection this big picture that we create in sixth and seventh grade. Because my school is a span school, so we're 6th through 12. So we want to set the foundation in sixth and seventh grade, and then we start with the instruction and we guide them through the learning, and that's an important thing. We say that we guide them through the learning. We're participants, they're participants. We kind of do this together, and then we create a support structure for them, if they need it along the way. Some kids need a very strong support structure, and some kids don't. But you have to be able to, if you really want to meet the need of the student in a curriculum like ours, because yes, our curriculum is very rigorous from the get-go. People that come to our school understand that our school is about learning. It's about education. You're not going to come to our school if you're going to play video games 10 hours a day. But there's a balance. They're still students, and we know it, and they're kids, and we know it. And, we want them to have fun. But you wanna create this. What is the word? You wanna scaffold your instruction so that you're meeting the needs of each and every student, and our teachers are really good at that. Our teachers are good at identifying what the students need and addressing those needs, and providing support either directly or indirectly through the school and counseling and so forth, so that as the kids go through the learning process, they don't feel like they're falling into a well of darkness that they gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and they'll never be able to crawl out of. We always want to make sure, hey, so that's important. And I think too many schools dive in with the instruction. So, okay, we're going to start teaching. They open the book and they start teaching the kids, but are they ready? Do they have the tools to be able to do what needs to be done with the curriculum and in the school site setting?
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question.
You did. You totally did. It's really cool. It's fun. So I love this too, because it's like, it to me is also really practically applicable to like present day and business owners. And this is like how you also drive your employees in a sense. Like it's getting to know them and caring about them. And getting like helping them to understand like part of their job is like really part of their life. So I really love like what you do when you start out in the beginning, where it's you're linking the educational like dynamic to this is like a real life skill, right? And so I'm curious about this too, because this is coming from someone who I love learning. I am still learning today. I love it. I take online courses, classes. I'm attending colleges. I don't get degrees. I just really love learning. So I just go to online colleges, take the classes that I want, right? So I'm constantly learning stuff that you probably won't even hear about sometimes on a podcast or anywhere else because it's weird but it's wonderful to me. So saying that, I barely went to high school. Like, I hated it so much. I would ditch school to go to my
Really?
job. Yes.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, actually funny. I worked at Zuma J Surf Shop. You know Jay from back in the day, and he had
Yeah.
no idea I was ditching school, by the way. He just thought like I told him that we were watching a movie again, And so I had lied basically to get out of school. So I was like, yeah, we just watched a movie again. So I thought I'd come to work early. But when I went to work, he was engaged with me. He was teaching me customer service. He was teaching me how to speak to customers, how to sell, how to connect with people, how to run a company, how to manage
Yeah.
employees. His wife, Candace, was like going on the back end and teaching me about the accounting. I was learning about the accounting software. Like I was massively engaged because here I was ditching school to go learn, which is fascinating. And I
Yeah.
think not just the curriculum at the school that I was at, but also it was the teachers. So I'm really curious, like, how do you guys select teachers? Because I remember some of my teachers, and my favorite ones were the ones who were engaged and actually like really liked teaching and loved what they did. And I wanted to go to those classes. But
Yeah.
there was most of the teachers in my high school, unfortunately, like you could tell they just like hated their job. And you're like, I don't want to be here either, so I'm gonna go. Like, so I'm curious how you guys like select teachers even for a school of this caliber.
Yeah. And it's not just teachers, right? Because um it, creating a successful academic institution, you know what? Creating any institution means that you got to create a culture of expectation and respect that people are going to want to be at. They want to participate in. They're going to look forward to going there every day, right? So there's this. I keep going back to the big picture and the culture that's created around the school. Um, so yes, the teachers the teachers are, they're key. And when hiring a teacher, you gotta, what we do is we have conversations with them. We bring them in 2 3 4 times and we have conversations, say, look, this is our philosophy. This is how we do it at the Science Academy. The Science Academy was created almost 30 years ago. And it was built on foundational aspects that we want to maintain, that we want to keep. Certain things like we want a lot of student engagement. you know we want the community, we want the parents to be involved, so teachers find a way to make sure that the parents are involved in the students' education. We want the kids to have opportunities, going back to the whole concept of failure. We're big on saying, hey, okay, you took this exam, you didn't do that well on it. Let's try it again. Let's relearn it, retake the test, and then it's not about the grade. We'll change the grade. It's about the learning. And I guess that's what I should be harping on, is
Mm.
that in my school, the teachers understand that it's about the learning and not about the grade. It's
Mhm.
about the mastery. Yeah, there's this term called mastery learning, and it kind of hit everybody about 15 years ago or so, maybe about 12 years ago. But this is something that we've been doing for forever. It's I would have students in my classroom who would get a 90%, and I would say, hey, you're going to retake the test. Well, why? I got a 90%. Because you're not a 90% person. You're a 99, 100% person. I know that. So we're going to talk about the things you got wrong,
Hmm.
and we're going to make sure that you understand what it is that you were confused on, and you're going to retake the test. And they would retake it, and yes, they'd get that 99 or 100. I said, now that's you. That's your potential. Now you're doing what to the best of your ability. That's what I want to see. And my teachers are really good. When we hire our teachers, they're really good at understanding, that philosophy, that we want to maximize the potential of our students, but we also know that they're going to fall along the way.
Mhm.
So, if they do a homework assignment and it's missing this, or this part of the homework assignment wasn't done correctly, or whatever it is, okay, look, here's your grade. We're going to we're going to give you an opportunity to go home and fix it, because by going home and fixing it and relearning and redoing, that's where the learning takes place, right? So that's what we want. So we hire our teachers, we have these discussions. They're really awesome. I have the best teachers in the world. I can go into any classroom at any time and just sit there and hang out and become a part of the discussion or add to this discussion. If it's a science class or a math class, the teachers let me just take over and start teaching, or teach with them, or I could just teach the class. It's just it's really an awesome environment, and yeah, it starts with them applying, and then we're going through our our interviews and so forth, and making sure that they understand our philosophy and the culture that we've created. And yeah, when coming on board, they understand that. But it's not just the teachers; it's the administrators. It's our magnet coordinator, our counselors. Our outer classroom, our even our custodians, everybody. It's
That's
we
awesome.
we really have a whole culture. We have an understanding of what we want for our school, and everybody's there for the kids. Everybody's on board.
Hey everyone, it's Carly. If you're really resonating with what we're talking about and want to get clear on what truly drives you, what your core values are, head on over to my website. In the tools and tips section, there is a free values assessment. And this is a quick exercise that's going to help you to uncover what actually matters most with you so you can lead and live with more clarity, fulfillment, and momentum. I love that. And it's beautiful too, because it's the same thing you see in major companies is like you understand your mission, you understand the vision, you understand the company culture. And I love that you said even the custodian is like hired based on that because people don't realize how important that is.
Yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure. They work hard.
They
They work
do.
hard. I
Yeah.
have the best custodians ever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
see, there you go. And it's like it's not level of engagement that you know that you're getting from them because they're so aligned with the values and the mission, which
yeah.
is really amazing.
Everybody's part of the educational process at my school. The cafeteria workers, the custodians, our campus aides, our security, everybody adds to it. The kids could not do what they do if it wasn't for the input and the participation of all my employees. So, and you have to create that culture. You have to create that workspace.
Yeah.
There's got to be that connection. You can't. My office techs, they're wonderful. Without my office techs, the schools just wouldn't run. So my community rep who reaches out to the community and makes sure that the parents are engaged. My dean who hopefully I don't have to have. I use her more as an individual who supports the instructional process and then other things. Because that's where that's where we're at. So everybody has their role. Everybody has their niche um to contribute.
Well, and I think what's really cool about this, the more we dive into it, like this is a very well-run business, where
Yeah,
schools usually aren't even considered to be a business. And the way that we're hearing it, like this is genuinely a well-run business. And you're
yeah,
applying all the business principles at work within this as the company. And we're seeing not only you guys thrive in that environment, but we get to see the students thrive as well, which is really inspiring. So I love what you guys are doing. It's
yeah.
very cool.
It is like a business. You have the fiscal aspect of it, and then you have the operations aspect of it, and you've got the facilities that you got to deal with. You got the rules and the laws and all of the all the compliance things that you got to do. But then there's that one piece, the educational, that product that you got to make sure is top
Yeah.
notch. So
And so this is cool too, because this also dives into a different aspect of the human potential. We're looking at this where we see this in colleges, right? We kind of expect it from some colleges. Like some of the top colleges run like a business and we hear about it and they get to do all this fun stuff that you're doing and people are excelling, right? But that's
yeah,
normal. But we don't see it in these grade school, high school classes, middle school. Like this is unusual in our society in the States to have like almost like a college run sort of thing. Like we have a Harvard level business thing going on at this middle school and high school, right? And
yeah,
so it is a big push. It's a huge change in that environment. But part of that as well is, as you were saying, like you went through a lot to be able to get this to be what it is today. So I know that this was an incredibly important mission for you, or else you wouldn't have done it because you shared some of the pains that went on. But yeah, share with us like some of what you had to push through and like what you actually did to like help you get to the other side because this is a mission that you just did not give up on and a lot of people could have given up early on.
yeah.
Mhm.
Like I said before, I felt like there was this gap, this misunderstanding, this system in place that that we created, that we put in place for the students thinking that we're helping them, but it was actually holding them back. So it was a process of taking a few years to really see where the kids were at, what are they coming in with? What are they coming in with in sixth grade? What is that prior knowledge that they have? What do they need, and what is their potential, and then building on it. And once I was able to do that and augment the instruction and build on it, I started doing it. But yeah, there were people everywhere. I don't want to mention any specific people, but who said the kids can't, you're hurting the kids, they're not, their brains aren't developed enough. I would go to conferences where I was a guest speaker at conferences, the future of STEM education and so forth, where I was actually the guest speaker, and people would be telling me that I was making a mistake. And then I would put up my data and show them. I said, you know what? Maybe if this had been 1 year, maybe if we could go back and reflect and let's think and talk about it. But this is year after year. I had 10 years in a row where the kids were doing it, where they were the number one kids in the state, where they were getting 4s and 5s on their EP exams in middle school. This was years and years of doing it, and it was difficult. I was lucky that in LAUSD I had the support of my superintendent, and I had the support of some of the higher instructional leaders. But even that took a little bit of time, and I guess the biggest hurdle was getting the support of the community itself. It's not that they didn't want it, is that I don't think the community understood the potential of their own kids. It was like, what?
Yeah.
My kid did this? And I started, one of the things that I started doing it was I started saying to my students, okay, you're going to take this exam home, you're going to take it with your folks. And they said, what? And I said, yes. We're on chapter 7. Here's the test. Take it home and take it with your parents. It's an open book test. Use the book. Take it with your parents. And it was the best thing I ever did, because the next day the parents would call me, or they would email me and say, oh my God, I took that. I can't believe what my kid is doing. He's doing this. I can't believe that I can't. This was so advanced. This was so hard. And they would say, thank you, Mr. Lauchu. It was so great to see, that my son and my daughter is able to do this. And so overcoming that whole mindset, of what the kids can and cannot do at that age in middle school, not just, at the level of the educational system and at the level of the district, but just at home with the parents. That was a struggle, but once I was able to find ways to include the parent community, I would say, hey, involve, sit down with your uncles and your aunts and your grandparents and your parents, go home, take the book, and it just changed everything. It woke everybody up, and through our continued success year after year, I started getting less and less naysayers at me. I started doing a lot of conventions and symposiums as a speaker and stuff as time passed, and I started getting less and less. But the struggles at first of people just not believing,
Yeah.
I don't know if it was that they weren't believing, or if they just were so stuck in the rut of all these years of the standards, were they just stuck, or did they just not believe? Maybe, change is hard, maybe, but that
Yeah,
was,
it's like the decades and decades and decades of us seeing things one way. And it's funny because the human behavior stuff, there's stuff that I do in human behavior, and like even just sometimes I explain like what I do, but you can see in people's faces like they're like, yeah, bullshit, and it's
Right.
like, yeah, it's like it's cool.
Right.
So my best clients are referrals because it's really hard for people to believe the possibilities based on what's newer and what's coming up, which to me isn't even new. It's very hard to break into systems, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, until everyone starts to shift their perception, like it's incredibly challenging to basically bring the masses on board to say like, okay, our kids don't have to be this way, right? Like it doesn't have to be, we don't have to oversimplify things for them. Like, are we actually, we're kind of over supporting them, we're overprotecting them. Like
Yeah.
I have a friend who grew up, he's really funny. His parents sent him grocery shopping at 4. And he's like, yeah, when I was 4 years old, I just had to cross the freeway and I would go grocery shopping. He's an international speaker. He's one of the guys who I learned human behavior from.
Wow.
I know, but he's totally fine. He loves his parents. Not mad at him for it. And he's like, yeah, I really just got to like be on my own and do my own thing and like figure my life out. And he did. And so funny, I can't even fathom doing that, by the way. My brain
No.
still has it's still struggling with what
Right.
like he's accomplished. And I'm like, what? Like
Yeah.
I'm like, that's insane. But it's true. It's like he had the potential. His parents like are you're fine and then he moves forward, And
Change
it's
is
amazing.
hard.
Change is so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People don't like change. People don't like change. It's like it's. I tried to explain to people. You're not a. People aren't afraid of the dark. No one's afraid of the dark. It's what's in the dark that they don't know, that they're not familiar with. That's what they're afraid of, and that translates to education. It's like they're afraid of change because they don't know, they're not aware. It's hard to
Yeah.
try new things because they don't know what's going to happen. But
Yeah.
my message is give it a shot, try it, and if it doesn't work, it's okay.
It's not a big
It's
deal.
okay.
Yeah.
It's not always supposed to work. Penicillin was a mistake.
Yeah.
It's just it's okay. Try new things. Push the envelope. Give them the opportunity. That's where the real learning happens. But don't hold them back. But we're trying to teach them with a system that was in place when I was in school. That
Yeah.
was a long time ago.
Really want that.
Pterosaurs walked the earth back then. Can't we can't teach them with that system. It's these kids are smart today. Just give them the opportunity. They'll show you.
Yeah,
So
they're really bright, and we have so much access to there's so many things we didn't have access to before, which is amazing. It's incredible. Like even books, right? Like I love reading, and there's books that like at one point in my life, I never would have even had access to see because they're so old. There's only a few copies, they haven't been translated, and then all of a sudden we have like the internet and more reach, and one scholar translates it, and then someone puts it into a PDF and they put it on archive.org. And all of a sudden, I'm reading something that I never could have touched before.
right.
Yeah. And our access to education and information is just so huge. So I can't imagine, like, how can we not adjust our system to be able to accommodate everything new that we're able to have?
Yeah.
We get all the studies from other countries that we never heard about before. It's like, well, now they're just at our fingertips. And I get them through an Instagram post from some interesting science thing I'm following, And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's cool. I didn't know that was happening.
Yeah. They're already learning faster than we did. I mean,
Yeah.
students, the amount of information that they're taking in every minute of every day, they're taking in a lot really fast. That just has to be use that in education. They go home and they're like this with everything, with their phones and the video game. They're taking all this information, they're processing it. Okay, teach them how to use that processing ability in school, and that's what we try to do. Okay, it's school time is school time, so let's access that because we know it's there. Just provide the opportunity.
And I'm curious too, because I love one of my favorite things you're doing is that you're making it like the practical application to life. So one of the things, when I talk about procrastination, like everyone's going to procrastinate if they don't feel like it's important. if you don't think it's important, why would you do it? And
Right.
so people beat themselves up all the time for procrastination and failure and stuff, but the reality is you just didn't think it was important. And if I look at other parts of your life, you're really hyper focused, right? So
Right.
I love that you're bringing this into the school dynamic. And when you started to see like, okay, it's time to make this practically applicable in like a life lesson, like how did that come about? Like when did you start to figure that out?
Um, I, 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 I don't know exactly when it happened, but I remember it.
Yeah.
It was like my second year in the middle school, where I had a student who said to me, why do I have to learn this? And you hear that. I mean, you have a lot of kids that say, why am I taking geometry? Why am I taking physics? I'm never gonna use it. I'm not gonna be a physicist, you know? So, but I remember, why do I have to learn this? And I looked at that kid and I go, why? And it's because this is you. These biological systems are you. This is you every minute of every day. And then I started spitting out the reason how that what we were learning in class was connected to him every minute of every day.
Mhm.
And he just sat there looking at me. And I said, why wouldn't you want to know? I said, why wouldn't you want to know what makes you tick? I said, why would you not want to do that? Why would you want to be so ignorant about yourself? And 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 the kid just looked at me, and then I looked at the rest of the class as, guys, let's talk about how all of this is relevant to you every second of every day. You know, and um and that really hit. And then I took that into physics. I remember that we were talking about frictional forces, and I said to the kids, I said, none of you would even be here without friction. You wouldn't be able to walk here. You'd be right where you were at, because without friction, you couldn't have gone anywhere. You need friction to take every step that you take. So um, what if you woke up on an ice rink, and you woke up and everything you touched was like what, ice and oil and grease. You couldn't move anything, go anywhere, nothing. It's like, come on. So I tried to, I remember that moment, and I just started building on it. Every
Yeah.
single time I every time I taught a lesson, before I taught the lesson, I said, this is why we're learning it. That we are
Yeah.
we are about to learn this because this is how it's connected to you, and this is why it's important.
Hey everyone, it's Carly. So, if this conversation is really hitting home and you want to get a real snapshot of what's working and what's not in your business, head on over to my website in the tools and tips section and you can have the business performance health check. In just about 15 minutes, you're going to see where the friction is and where your next growth opportunity lies within your company.
And so in my high school right now, where I'm the principal, all of my teachers start every lesson with what we call purpose of the lesson. This is the purpose of the lesson. So it grounds the kids. We want to do three things. We want to ground the kids in why they're learning what they're learning. So this is the purpose of the lesson. We start that. Then we want to show them where we're going to begin and where we're going to end, so that they have this idea of the journey that they're about to embark on.
Mhm.
We're going to learn this because of this reason, that we're going to start here and we're going to end here. And it's like it's like going to Vegas. Nobody who's never been to Vegas before just gets in their car and drives there. You take out a map, and you plot your journey and you see where you're going to end. And that's what we wanted. That's what we do. So once we tell them where they're starting, where they're going to end, we give them an introduction to the journey of, these are the steps they're going to take to get there. So the kids, are connected to the lesson already from the beginning. But yeah, that I remember that day, many 28 years ago, 27 years ago, when that kid asked me, why am I learning this?
I love that. I've asked that question before and I was told because I had to, and I totally failed that class.
Yeah, a lot of kids ask that question. And they get that answer because you have to, or
I was
because it's
like,
part of the standards.
yeah,
Yeah.
they should
Or
have to.
because I have to teach it to you.
Uh-huh.
No, no.
Ironically, if I knew what I knew today, about that particular class, I would actually have studied my ass off and it would have been very helpful for me. But
Oh yeah?
they just didn't explain it. It was a math
What
class.
class was it?
So it was geometry, and so it was the
Oh,
geometry class. Yeah, and then also I did the same thing with when I got to like trigonometry and pre-calc, and they just yeah, they like didn't really explain it properly. But even knowing what I know today, I remember sitting in a class one time and one of my teachers telling me about a book that he read, Principia, and he started tearing up because it was such an inspiring book for him. And he said, it's not just math, it's life. And I looked at the kid sitting next to me who happened to be like a math major and he's like a little math genius, right? And he's like, yeah, he's like, I loved that book. And I was like, really? And I was like, could I read it, you think? I was like, I would say I'm good up until algebra 2. And he goes, if you understand calculus, you'll understand everything. And I was like, what do you mean? And he starts getting into the details and I was like, why didn't anyone tell me that? I would have gone to calculus. I would have
yeah,
nailed it. I was like,
yeah,
and he's like, that's it. He's like, I love math, so I'll do more. But if you know calculus, you get everything. And I was
yeah.
like, like you didn't
You,
tell me.
yeah, the more knowledge you have, it's like
Ah.
I told my kids, knowledge is power. You know, you see the world through a whole different, it's kind of like waking up or coming out of this fog where, you know, you look at a tree and you see, and you have X-ray vision because you see
Mhm.
the xylem and you see the phloem, you know, and you see the transport of nutrients and you see how everything's growing and everything kind of slows down. You know, the world slows down because you see all the forces and all the chemistry and all the physics and all the math around you. It's just and we talk to the kids about that. We give them the opportunity to have conversations with us
Mm.
and say, hey, it's the end of the school year. Tell us, you know, let's go outside. Let's talk about what you see and how it you know, how you envision it. And we actually give them the opportunity to do that. And it's
Mhm.
fun. It's fun to
Yeah.
listen to the kids take everything that they learned that year or in previous year and create a new picture of how they see the world.
I
And
think
it just brings it all together. It's really
yeah. What you're saying too, like it gives me goosebumps, this one part, because I think what you're saying right here is so important that is actually highly underrated, even in major educational institutes. Because I remember when I first started learning again more about science, I found a teacher that I really liked that does like these workshops and stuff. And if we were learning about like the sun and its impact on the planet and things I just didn't understand were like sunspots and how sunspots are responsible for like warmer time periods and colder time periods, right? And he was saying that the time period where the London River like almost froze over, it was because we were having a low cycle of sunspots. And I was like,
yeah,
whoa, fascinating. And so he's sharing all this stuff with me and how like our ozone layer shifts, like depending on cosmic debris. I had no idea about any of these things. And at the time, I was living in Spain Canyon and there's butterflies everywhere. So I'm not used to that, by the way. And now that I've learned all this other stuff, my brain was like, I wonder what's going on in space, you know? And I was like, that the butterflies are here because they're obviously attracted to flowers that are here. Did the flowers come here from the wind? Or was it like that one story that he told me about where in Africa, they were trying to get these elephants to stop eating all this vegetation in this specific spot. But then because the elephants ate the vegetation, it actually made some of this other vegetation that was natural in there before come back up, right? So it was interesting because of that. Then they had more of the bees and the flora, like the flora and fauna that was actually natural to there, and the invasive species left. So it was like, whoa, all this is happening. And I couldn't stop thinking, like, was this an invasive species that covered up our flowers? Like, what's going on? Or was there something like some sort of shift in our temperature? Like, is there something going on in the universe? And I remember after that, I met up with this guy who's very knowledgeable, working at a high level to help with like climate stuff. And I just happened to be meeting him that weekend. He was a friend of a friend. And I started asking these questions. And he was so upset with me because he was so stuck in seeing everything in one way. It's like nobody had ever asked him to go outside and take his information and look at it in a new light.
right.
And I think it's like what you just said, where it's like you walk outdoors and you say, how do you apply it? Like, how do you see it? How do you do it? It's like education has a risk of getting us stuck in a box. It genuinely
Yeah.
does. And I love that you're making the kids like think about how to step outside of the box.
Oh,
Yeah. Was there
yes.
something that what was that something that you originally intended to do? Was it a problem that you saw that you're like, I got to get these kids like thinking for themselves? Or was it always like a part of the perception of what curriculum is necessary?
I think it just kind of happened naturally.
Mhm.
I didn't go in there, I didn't get into education because I went to school to be a teacher, I actually was in a different profession, and then I went into education because I needed to do that at the time.
Mhm.
So it wasn't something that I had planned, this out of the box thinking, something that I planned ahead of time. So it just kind of it just felt like the systems that were in place at the time were so structured and so rigid,
Mhm.
that they didn't allow for the students to be able to explore and to investigate, and to create and to utilize their innate creativity, and I felt, okay, let's remove all of those barriers. Let's get rid of what the system says and what the world tells you that you have to do. You guys are 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, 15. This is where all this is the time. You're not old enough where you're kind of stuck in your ways yet, and you're not young enough where you really don't know enough yet. You're right there. You're right there where you should have this explosion of creativity. So let's unleash it. And so that's where I just started asking questions. What do you think? If you're teaching a lesson, and there are a lot of pedagogical um nuances that you want to make sure that you stay away from, if you want to access the creativity of the students. Don't, like you said, don't box them in. So one of the things that you want to add is asking questions. Ask them a lot of questions. Teach the lesson, and then change aspects of that lesson, saying, okay, now, the heart pumps blood to the body through the ventricles, through the left ventricle, and it goes through the aorta and the aortic arch and so forth, and it's got to maintain a certain amount of pressure. Okay, now, what if the left ventricle became weak? What if the right ventricle stopped working? How would that affect, if you start at if you like if I did this in an English class, and I'm not an English person, but I just thought it would be fun to do. I went into an English class, and the teacher was teaching, I don't remember what story it was, Don Quixote de la Mancha or something, and they were teaching about one of the plots and the characters, and the character development. And I said, what would happen if this certain character didn't exist? How would that affect the story? All of a sudden, we got all this discussion. Oh, well, this would happen. Oh, no, that would happen. No, because he did this. And the kids talking about how the story would just change if that character disappeared. It showed me that they truly understood the story, and the characters
Yeah.
were thinking outside the box. And you want to do that in everything, and so, yeah. So going back to your question, how I just started asking questions when I wanted to access their creativity and let them loose. I just started asking questions of what would happen if, what if?
Mhm.
Yeah, that happens early on. Yeah, and it was so exciting. I
It is
love listening.
exciting.
Yeah, because they come up with all these, they're not at that age. They're really dying. They're dying to explore and to go
Yeah.
and to be given that freedom. And when you give them that freedom, they just take off.
It's so cool,
It's
isn't it?
Yeah, it's so cool to listen and hear what they have to say. And I think that a lot of people could learn a lot from listening to the younger ones, because they come up with stuff that we would never think of,
Yeah.
you know? Um,
They don't have all those biases they're stuck in.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're not stuck in that, like you said, the bias of that way of thinking that, it's
Yeah.
just that our educational system has to find a way to do more of that. They have to find a way to, we do it, but we've been doing it for almost 30 years, and it's just part of our being now.
Yeah.
Giving them the opportunity to explore and to ask questions and to make mistakes and think outside the box and throw away, what everybody thought, how things should be done, and actually create a system that works for the kids. And Carly, it's always in flux. I don't want you to think that this is a system that we've created that we follow every year. At the end of every year, we always have this discussion. All right, guys, our teachers talk to the kids. What worked? What didn't work? They get feedback. Then we come together and they talk to each other. What worked? What didn't work? What do we need to change or modify for next year? So we are in constant flux of in change, modifying, adding, subtracting, to meet the needs of our community. And you do that by getting feedback from everybody. And even our teachers will talk to each other. Our calculus teacher will talk to our pre-calculus teacher and say, hey, they came into calculus this year and they didn't know. Oh, okay, you know what? I'll add that. But then our pre-calculus teacher will talk to our algebra 2 teacher and say, hey, in order for them to, they need, okay, I'll add that to my algebra 2. And then our algebra 2 teacher will talk to our algebra 1 teacher and say, hey, for me to do this and him to do that and him to do that and him to add that, I need you to, okay. So, it kind of creates this thing where everybody's making change to accommodate, what's coming next. And it's ongoing every year. We make these changes.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Again, it's like one of those amazing business principles where you're diving into the dynamic of feedback, but I love that you're also getting it from kids as well, because they're on the direct receiving end of the education. So you really understand like what's working for them, what's not working for them, adjustments that can be made is really cool. So I love
Yeah.
that you guys are doing that. And yeah, the ever-flowing, ever-changing dynamic of a system. Yeah, and I'm curious too. So, you guys have done great things at the Science Academy STEM Magnet. What is the next steps for you as you start to bring this to the United States, which I'm very excited about? I don't have kids yet, but obviously I really want them to go there. But,
um, you know,
um,
we have been very successful. But there's always room for improvement, so um and that is something that we always want to keep in mind, at my school. Guys, we're doing great. We may be the number 1, 2, or 3 school in the state. We're always in the top there, one of those. And we're always one of the top schools in the nation. Yes, but we don't want to create this way of thinking where, okay, we've reached the ultimate limit. We always want to make sure that we keep in mind that there's always room to improve, always. So we're always looking for that. So we want to improve, in the years to come. We want to continue to provide opportunities to our kids, provide new opportunities, provide new ways to think outside the box, to provide new ways to access their creativity, um, provide new opportunities in new areas that are coming up. I mean, there yes, we are very proficient in things like robotics and computer science, but artificial intelligence is coming along. How are we gonna, we're already incorporating that into our instruction, and we're pretty adept at it. We're one of the schools that's pretty good at using it. But how can we further utilize that new technology, and they're going to be emerging technologies, and I don't know, in science, the word emerging has a different definition or connotation than the regular use of it in the English language. Emerging in science, when you have something that's emerging, it's something that appears through the combination of other things. Like I'll give you an example. Atoms can do certain things, but when you put atoms together, the molecule they make, that molecule is able to do something that the atoms can't, because the atoms came together. And when you put molecules together and you create cells, that cell is able to do things that the molecules independently could not. So our brains are made up of lots of our organic matter, and molecules and atoms and tissues, and the emergent technology is that we have the ability to think, right, and create thought and consciousness and so forth. So there are going to be emergent things that come out through the process of combining some of the technologies that we have and some of the systems that we have. So our school, we want to find ways to identify those emergent technologies and then find a way to utilize them to maximize. We're always looking to maximize the student's potential. So that's an area that we're always going to work towards. We want to always find different ways to maximize the potential, give them the opportunity. Our school's going to try new things. We're starting a new robotics program, a more advanced robotics program than the one we have. We're actually creating a machine shop, and our kids are actually going to be cutting their own parts and creating their own robots instead of putting things together that we get. We're going to be designing them in different ways. We're going to, there are so many different, there's going to be a lot in research. We really are going to start diving into research and our partnerships with universities. We've already started down that road, and we have a lot of students do that, but we want to expand that so that our students have the opportunity to work at the university level. And although we've had students who have actually had professional papers published, we want more of that. And one of the biggest things that I think we're gonna have an effect on is just the whole concept of what does the future of education look like? What does the future of education look like? What direction should we go in? How are we going to give opportunities to our students that most systems would say no to? We want to break some of those paradigms, and like Star Trek. I love Star Trek. We're gonna go where no man has gone before. We're gonna find it. We're gonna create those opportunities, and and just see what we can do to change. We do want to create some change, and change needs to happen. Change needs to happen in the current educational paradigm in this country. It needs to happen. If I'd have stuck with what I was supposed to do, I would never have the Science Academy STEM magnet. I have the Science Academy STEM magnet because the superintendent said, Carlos Lauchu, can you do with an entire school what you do in your classroom? And I said, yes, but you have to leave me alone. The district has to let me do my thing, because I won't necessarily do it the system's way. I need to do it my way. And he said, hey, we're good. Do your thing. I trust you. And that trust is what, led to the Science Academy as it is today. We were trusted to do what we were good at doing, what we knew, and make the changes that we felt needed to be made. So that's just going to continue. We'll continue to make change. We'll continue to dive into new areas, and hopefully, we'll make a difference in the educational system in the United States. So.
Yeah, I have a feeling you're going to, just based off what you've done so far. I have a feeling you're not stopping anytime soon. No, this has been really amazing. I think another really big key takeaway just for us as listeners, right, and participants in the universe is to remember what it's like to be that kid who got so excited to learn things, be creative, like step into that dynamic. I think we forget about that a lot, not realizing like that part never goes away. It's just giving ourselves permission to tap into it, like dive into the failure dynamics, dive into just messing up and just being like, all right, I messed up. Like, how do I fix this next time? How do I fix this next time? Because I know the business owners that we get most inspired by are the ones who are failing on a regular basis, but then are like, yeah, but I tried this time. And then we get to kind of see their growth and evolution. And I think we forget to do that as adults as well. So
For
it's
sure.
like
For
a
sure. And
strong lesson.
the best ones to remind us are the kids. Give
Yeah,
me a
they are.
chance. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And they probably can give you more ideas than you think. We were having a good laugh about my nieces yesterday, where one of them had shared something with my husband and he just looked at it. He's like, how do you know that? You know? And I was like, that's cool. And it just
Yeah.
opened up a whole can of worms conversation, you know,
Yeah.
and she was 8 at the time when she said it. They're 10 now, but yeah, it's amazing what kids know and what they can think of and what they can do when we really push them actually to believe in themselves as well. So this is
A
really
lot of what I do and what we do
Mhm.
today is because of what the students told us over the years.
Yeah.
A lot of what we do is based on the feedback that we got from them. What worked, what didn't work, how they felt, about certain aspects of things that we were doing. We are better today because of our students in our community.
Yeah. And I love that too, because what was interesting is some of the things that you brought up in the beginning, where some of the challenges were, is everyone was worried if the students could handle it. Where ironically, the students are the ones giving the feedback that have refined the program. And it's even getting like more rigorous from time to time because they're the ones who are like, no, not only can we handle it, this is what we enjoy, this is what we don't enjoy.
Yeah,
So it really shows us how little we know about our kids and how
yeah,
advanced they are.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
just give them the opportunity. They'll do it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this. This was a really inspiring conversation. I hope people have enjoyed it as much as I have. To me, everything that we talked about today is so practically applicable in like not just our students, but also like businesses as well. And getting people inspired, getting people on board, and really making a difference in the world, making changes. And I'm sure there's a lot of parents listening to this that are probably going to be interested in your school. So tell people how they can find you.
You're welcome to apply. It's all right. It's good.
So where can they find you?
We're in North Hollywood, California.
Okay.
And there, since you said a lot of parents are gonna be watching this, there's one thing I want to say is, yes, we do have a good school. We have a great school. I have a great community, faculty and students. I really do. But we're not necessarily the best school. And I want to explain this. For the students that come to our school, we are the best school for them. But we're not the best school for everybody. So I would advise the parents who are watching this, and we have orientation every year. And we have many orientations where the parents come and we talk to them about our school, where they're trying to decide where to send their kids. And I tell them this every year. Start by talking to your kid. Get to know your kid, their interests, and what they want to do with their life. And some parents say, well, they're too young. They don't know. No. That goes. Now you're going back to everybody saying they can't, they're not capable and so forth. Yes, things might change. And there's a good chance that when that it's going to change. But right now, listen to them because you want to make them happy today. Don't wait until tomorrow to make them happy. Make them happy, make them love learning today. Because
Mhm.
if you, oh, you know what, they'll get it. No, by the time they get it, they're gonna hate learning. And then it's over. Talk
Mhm.
to your kids, see what their interests are with it. Start watching YouTube and the Science Channel and the Learning Channel and National Grid. Start spending time with them on the
Mhm.
subjects that they're interested in. And if it's not science, if it's English or poetry, watch something on Edgar Allan Poe or something. Or if it's history, find out what they like, but start spending time with them on a regular
Mhm.
basis, just sharing what their interests are. And then search for a school that meets their interests and their needs. The best school for your kid is the school where your kid wakes up every morning and says, Mom, Dad, I can't wait to go to school today. That is the best school for your kid. That is
Mm.
the one. It might not be my school. And and for a lot of people, my school, it's not my school.
Yeah.
So if you can find that school where your kid wakes up and runs into your rooms, come on, I gotta get to school. It's time to go to school. You know that you're
You
at the
found it.
perfect school for your kid. All right. So just keep that in mind. There's a perfect school for everybody.
Yeah.
Just make sure it's the right one for yours.
I absolutely love that. I love that. I think that's the best things for individuals to think about is it's not just about like the school or the education. It's how does it specifically align with what's really important to your kids, right?
Yeah.
And it's cool. I talked to my husband about that a lot because we say we don't know what will send them to school. We'll probably live in places with good school districts, but once we find out what the interests are, then everything changes. Because if there's like a specialty school, we talk about it. We're like, wherever it is in the world, if like that's what they love and that's what they're dedicated to, it's like I want them to wake up every day and just be like so excited to go do something that they're inspired by. So I think that is the top key priority, and it's kind of it's like what you do in your school, but you're like do it at home because
Create
can't be all you. Yeah.
yeah, create a love of learning in your child. Create a love of learning in your child by spending time with them and showing them that learning is important.
Yeah.
That will go a long way. Yeah.
Well, thank you again for today. This is amazing, and I really appreciate it.
All right, Carly. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. Um, yeah, it's been a great time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll put all of the info for the school and Carlos as well. So his website, so you can find it in the show notes if there's anything else you guys want to learn about it. And thank you again. I look forward to seeing you next time.
All right.